This tutorial covers cluster samples. Cluster sampling is a sampling technique where the entire population is divided into groups called clusters, and a random sample of these clusters are selected. All observations in the selected clusters are included in the sample. Key there thing being all. So everything within the cluster will become part of your cluster sample. So let's take a look at an example where cluster sampling would be useful. So suppose that the Department of Agriculture wishes to investigate the use of pesticides by farmers in Minnesota. A cluster sample could be taken by identifying the different counties in Minnesota as clusters. Okay, so I'd take a county map of Minnesota, and each county is going to represent a cluster. So in order to take a random sample of the clusters, it would be helpful if they were numbered. So what I would do first is I'd go through and I'd number each of the counties. I'm not going to number all of them. There's 87 counties in Minnesota, so I'd number them 1 to 87. And then what I would need to do is use a table of random digits or a random number generator to randomly select how many clusters I want to be part of my sample. So let's say I want to include 5 clusters in my sample. So what I need is 5 random numbers. So I generated some random numbers earlier. Okay, so then what I would need to do is, if I had a fully numbered map, I'd go through and select where my counties are. So let's say that this was 22, let's say this was 35, 51 is maybe down here. Oh, I'm sorry, 39 we'll say is here, 51 is here, and 83, let's say 83 is here. So then once I have my clusters identified, I would need to go to each county and I would observe all of the farms in that county and see what their pesticide use is. So then each of those farms would then become part of my sample. So it's easier to visit several farmers in the same county than it is to travel to each farm in a random sample to observe the use of pesticides. So let's say I was taking a random sample instead of a cluster sample. I might get a farm over here, and then a farm here, and maybe a couple farms over here, and then a couple farms in here, and then a farm over here, and a farm here, and a farm here. That's going to take a lot of money and a lot of time to go around the state to all of these different farms observing pesticide use. So it's going to be a lot more cost effective and timely just to study everybody within each of these clusters. So again, a cluster sample is useful when geography would make a simple random sample costly and time consuming. And just the last note here, when you're dealing with a cluster sample done carefully can be treated as a random sample. So if you do perform your sampling technique carefully and thoughtfully, generally that will suffice as a random sample. So that is the tutorial on cluster samples. Thanks for watching.